That's right. As Doc Tony has explained to us over the past few shows, being injured in a car accident can affect you in many ways, and specifically in ways that a lot of us haven't even thought about. Not only is it important to get proper treatment by a qualified doctor and staff, but it's also important to know what proper insurance coverage is. Anthony Crothers, he's a chiropractic physician. He's better known to us as Doc Tony. He's back today to talk about what you need to know about coverage and care before you are involved in a car accident. So Doc Tony, you talked to me about this earlier and I was kind of blown away. What do you think that people need to know?
Well, Nicholas, first of all, the last couple of shows what I've talked about, what happens to people when they're actually involved in a car accident. When they have a low impact collision, what happens to their soft tissue, how important it is to have proper rehabilitation of that soft tissue, the long-term effects of not getting the proper treatment. And also I've talked about how horrible the insurance coverage really is in the state of Florida. And if you're involved in a car accident, that you're not guaranteed that there's any type of protection for you. In other words, there's no guarantee of loss. When you get behind the wheel of a car in the state of Florida, due to our weak legislation, our weak legislators being schooled by the insurance lobbyists, and I mean schooled. Either you're being schooled, legislators, or you're playing the same game they're playing, either one of them, because you can't lack the cognitive ability to really understand the position you put the drivers in the state of Florida.
So tell me this, something that you mentioned that kind of resonated with me is understanding your own insurance coverage. And I may be guilty of that too. I just kind of hear the limits they recommend and say, sign me up. But you say it's really important to know what your own insurance coverage is like.
Right. Don't just go with what your adjuster says, because the insurance companies are playing a game of chess. Their whole objective is to have people paying premiums. And any claims that come in where you're paying more premiums than the claims that they're paying out, that's profit for them. So they're aligning their pawns, their kings, their knights all around to limit what they're actually paying out. So what people want to make sure that they have is you want to be responsible for other drivers. Make sure you have bodily injury coverage. That protects the other individual. If you were to cause an accident, that means they're protected. They're going to have some type of coverage. And since a lot of individuals do not have bodily injury because it's not a mandate in the state of Florida, it's not mandatory for people to drive around with bodily injury coverage, right, which is just completely crazy. You would think that anyone that's a responsible person living in this country, you would want to take responsibility for an individual that you injured. But since insurance companies are being slick, it's not a mandate for you to have bodily injury. So they're not worried about if you injure somebody in a car accident. What is mandatory is for people to buy what's called personal injury protection, which that was put in place in the 1970s. Okay, that was $10,000 to protect people if they're injured or involved in a car accident, to limit the amount of lawsuits, to make sure doctors are covered, and to make sure you are covered. $10,000 in the 70s. Can anybody imagine paying milk prices from 1970s currently today, or gas prices? So that $10,000, if it rose with inflation and the cost of living like it should be about $30,000 to $40,000 today to take care of the same minor accidents that was put in play in the 1970s.
Right.
Now what your legislators have done, thanks to the lobbyists, which, hey, don't hate the lobbyists. The lobbyists, boom, they're popping champagne bottles. And the people that they work for, they gave them a big tip because they just saved them at least $1.7 billion on all of our account. So don't be mad at the insurance companies. Their job is to make as much money as they can. That's capitalism, and I'm for that. Be mad at the lobbyists, the 51% who gave this to them. Cheer for the 49% that opposed it, but the 51% that voted it in, we need to get rid of them, including the governor. He needs to go too.
Wow. So let's talk about, get back to insurance for a second. What is it, do you see a lot of folks who are injured by drivers who may or may not be insured, but even if they are insured, don't have the right coverage to protect them?
Exactly, exactly. There's people driving out there that either have no insurance at all, because what they'll do is they'll get the insurance, they'll register their car, and then they'll drop the insurance. And since we're not using technology to enforce it, and we don't have stiffer laws to make sure people are driving cars with insurance like they should be, people are getting away with that. So they're driving around without not only insurance, or they have insurance, but it's not a mandatory for you to have bodily injury insurance. That's why I recommend everyone have what's called uninsured motorist.
And tell us what that does.
Uninsured motorist protects you against the individuals that are driving around irresponsibly without bodily injury coverage. So if you were actually injured in a car accident by an at-fault driver who hit you and caused damage and they were uninsured, your uninsured motorist insurance would cover you and your passengers. But that's something that the insurance companies really don't want you to, they don't push it on you. They kind of like, you know, hey, if you know about it, yeah, you get it. If you don't, that's why everyone out there, call your agent today and find out if you have uninsured motorist and bodily injury. You'll be surprised how many you don't.
So we got about 30 seconds left here, but tell everybody, if you were a legislator, because you seem to have some really strong opinions, what would you do to make us all safer?
Well, I could never be a legislator, but I'll tell you, if I were governor, I'll tell you exactly what I'd do. Besides having a big open party house and invite everybody, the first thing I'd do is make everybody safer in the state of Florida driving. I would make bodily injury a mandate. You would have to have bodily injury coverage or you would not be driving in the state of Florida. I would have stiff laws that help me enforce the bodily injury, meaning if you got caught driving without bodily injury coverage, you're going to lose your license. You get caught another time, you're going to go to jail time. And I look at that as serious as somebody outside shooting a gun recklessly. You get behind the wheel of your car and you're not insured, you can cause the same damage. So it's not a good thing.
Well, Doc Tony, thanks so much for being an expert on this and giving your advice and for sponsoring this segment, of course. If you find yourself in need of some auto accident assistance, call Doc Tony. He's at 1-888-888-8863. That's a good number that I like to remember for a free consultation at one of his 2 convenient locations. Or visit him online if you'd rather do that at www.doctony.org. Because you, our friend, deserve to live pain-free.